Jacob sat on the edge of his bed, hands nervously clasped together, his eyes locked on the floor as if hoping the right words would somehow materialize there. He had rehearsed this conversation 1,000 times in his head, but now, with his mother standing in front of him, those words seemed to dissolve into nothing. "Mom, I need to tell you something," he finally managed, his voice shaking. His mother, Grace, glanced up from the laundry she was folding, her face soft but curious. "What is it, honey? You look like you've seen a ghost." Jacob's heart pounded in his chest as he gathered the courage to say the words that had been burning inside him for years. "I don't think I'm meant to be Jacob anymore." Grace paused, her fingers still on the fabric of the shirt she was folding, her eyes now entirely on her son. She didn't say anything, but the weight of her silence pressed against him. I've been feeling like this for a long time," Jacob continued, fighting through the lump in his throat. "I've been wearing women's clothes in secret, trying to understand why I feel more comfortable that way. I think I'm transgender. I think I'm meant to be your daughter, not your son." The silence stretched between them, growing heavier with every second that passed. Grace's hands trembled slightly as she set the laundry down, her eyes filling with questions and emotions Jacob couldn't read. "Jacob," she whispered, the disbelief clear in her voice. "This is a lot." "I know," Jacob said quickly, his heart aching at the uncertainty in her eyes. "I know this is huge, and I've been terrified to tell you. But I can't keep hiding who I am. I need to start living as who I truly feel I am inside. I want to transition, Mom." Grace sank down onto the bed next to him, her hands shaking as she reached out to take his. "You're my child," she said softly. "I love you, but I don't understand. This is so sudden. Are you sure? Maybe this is just a phase. Maybe you're just confused." Jacob's chest tightened. He had feared this response, the hope that it was something temporary, something that could be fixed or explained away. "It's not a phase," Jacob said quietly. "This is who I am. I've known for years." Grace sat there for what felt like hours, her grip on Jacob's hand loosening slightly. She wasn't angry, but the confusion in her eyes was palpable. It hurt Jacob more than any rejection could have. He had expected resistance, but this uncertainty was crushing. "I need time to think about this," Grace finally said, standing up slowly. "I'm not saying I don't love you. I need to process it." Jacob nodded, tears threatening to spill as he watched his mother leave the room, feeling more alone than he had ever felt before. A week had passed since Jacob's confession, and the house had fallen into an uneasy quiet. Grace had not brought up the conversation again, and Jacob was too scared to push her. Instead, he spent his days hiding away in his room, scrolling through articles and watching videos of other transgender people sharing their stories, hoping for some sense of comfort or guidance. It was late one evening when Grace knocked on Jacob's door. When he opened it, he was surprised to see her holding a small bag. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice soft, almost hesitant. Jacob nodded, stepping aside as she entered. Grace sat down on the bed, her hands nervously clutching the bag. "I've been thinking a lot about what you told me," she said, her eyes meeting Jacob's for the first time in days. "I won't pretend I understand everything, but I love you. I want to try." Jacob's heart lifted at her words, though he could hear the lingering hesitation in her voice. "I went to the mall today," Grace continued, her hands now fumbling with the contents of the bag. "I thought, maybe you'd want to pick out something together." Jacob's breath caught in his throat as he watched her pull out a simple, light pink blouse. It wasn't much, but the gesture felt monumental. His hands trembled as he reached out to take the blouse from her, his heart swelling with gratitude and emotion. "Mom, you didn't have to." "I wanted to," Grace interrupted, her voice a little firmer now. "I don't know if I'm ready to fully understand all of this, but if you're serious about this, then I want to be here for you. You're my child, and that doesn't change just because you might be my daughter instead of my son." Tears welled up in Jacob's eyes as he hugged the blouse to his chest, overwhelmed by the gesture. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Grace smiled, a little sadly, as she stood. "I'll be in the living room if you want to try it on," she said, giving him space. As soon as she left, Jacob slipped out of his clothes and carefully pulled the blouse over his head. The fabric felt soft and light against his skin, and for the first time in days, he looked at himself in the mirror with something like hope in his heart. The next few months were filled with small but significant steps. Jacob, who had chosen the name Jessica for her new life, began experimenting more with her appearance, trying out makeup and shopping for clothes that aligned with her true identity. Each step was nerve-wracking, but knowing her mother was beginning to accept her made it a little easier. Grace had her good days and bad days. Sometimes, she still accidentally called Jessica by her old name or used the wrong pronouns, but she was trying, and that effort meant everything to Jessica. One evening, Grace knocked on Jessica's door and stepped in, holding a small box. "I've been talking to a few friends," Grace said, setting the box down on the bed. "I met a mother from one of those support groups for parents of transgender children." Jessica's heart swelled. She had known her mother was making an effort, but this was the first time she realized just how much Grace was trying to understand. "She told me that makeup can be tricky to learn at first," Grace said with a smile. "So, I thought we could practice together. I never got to teach you about this stuff before, and I'd love to now." Jessica's breath caught in her throat as she blinked away the tears that threatened to spill. "Mom, I'd love that." Grace opened the box, revealing a simple makeup kit, and for the next few hours, mother and daughter sat together, laughing and experimenting with different looks. Grace's hands weren't as steady as they had been when she was younger, and Jessica fumbled with the brushes at first, but it didn't matter. In that moment, all that mattered was that they were together, sharing something they hadn't been able to before. As the weeks went by, Jessica found herself feeling more and more at home in her own skin. With her mother's tentative but growing support, she started coming out to her friends, who, to her relief, were accepting and kind. She was beginning to live authentically, and each day felt like a new step toward the future she had always dreamed of. One day, as Jessica and Grace were sitting on the couch together, watching TV, Grace turned to her daughter with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking," Grace said slowly, "about how much you've changed. Not just on the outside, but in here." She tapped her chest over her heart. "You seem happier." Jessica smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her. "I am, Mom. I really am." Grace reached over and took Jessica's hand, squeezing it gently. "I want you to know that I'm proud of you. It's taken me some time to understand, and I'm still learning, but I can see how much this means to you. And that's what matters most to me. You're my daughter, and I love you no matter what." Tears welled up in Jessica's eyes as she hugged her mother tightly. "Thank you, Mom. That means everything to me." As they sat together, holding on to each other, Jessica realized that her journey wasn't just about her. It was about her mother, too, learning to let go of the son she thought she had and embrace the daughter she had gained. It was a journey of love, understanding, and acceptance, one they were walking together. Years later, as Jessica stood in front of the mirror in her graduation gown, she smiled at the reflection she saw, a confident, beautiful woman who had finally found her place in the world. "Ready?" Grace called from the doorway, her eyes shining with pride. Jessica turned and nodded. "Ready?" As they walked out together, side by side, Jessica knew that no matter what challenges the future held, she had her mother's love and support. And that, more than anything, was what made her journey worthwhile. Thank you so much for watching till now. It means the world to have you here. This community is all about empowering each other and celebrating the incredible journeys of everyone on their path to living authentically. If you're ever feeling lost or alone, remember you have a whole family here for you. Hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, and let's keep inspiring each other, sending you all the love and strength in the world. Until next time, live your life by your rules.